Well, hello there everyone. Elden Ring Nightreign is certainly one of the video games of all time. I don't necessarily hate the game, but after playing through entirely too much of this game for this video, I can safely say, yeah, it's certainly a video game. It's not all bad. I think the character stories are pretty well done, and its soundtrack is one of From Software's bests, but I honestly think I would have preferred if this game was primarily a boss rush game with a visual novel story beats because it's not a good roguelike, and I don't think that's a controversial take there. But it does have plenty of bosses, and I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best, and because I'm stupid, I decided to go beyond just the Night Lords, but I'll also be ranking the 8 legacy bosses, the noteworthy character story bosses, and anything else I felt like throwing in there. So I've got a list of 30 bosses to talk about, and these fights are all from the view of a solo player, aside from the 2 that have AI companions that die in seconds anyways, so whatever. While there's definitely some gold here, we've also got some garbage to sift through, so let's get into it, shall we? Number 30, Adele, Baron of Night. When I first played Nightreign with some friends, Adele was my least favorite Night Lord, but I didn't think he was that bad. Then I fought him solo. This boss lacks arms or much in the way of bodily functions, so really for attacks he's either going to stomp around or he's going to constantly spam his bite, which is effectively a command grab that not only hurts you, but causes the boss to heal and build up your bleed gauge quickly, leading you to bleeding to death. In multiplayer, getting grabbed can actually be an opportunity for your teammates to get in some good damage, but in single player, you're just stuck in a 10-second cutscene that, as far as I know, you can't mash out of at all. His poison weakness is pretty cool though, making him expel the poison as an attack that also leaves him super vulnerable. Are these complaints skill issues? Sure, but I still really fucking hate this boss fight, and there is a much more objective issue in this boss fight. Because for some reason, his second phase runs like ass. It's so intensive, I guess, that even comedically strong pieces of hardware will lag during this part of the fight. This boss fight does have some good music, but that's the only real praise I can offer. I don't enjoy this boss, and quite frankly, I don't think I ever want to fight him again. I think 3 battles is enough for me to say, I'm good, and I'm gonna leave it there. Number 29, Centipede Demon. I just want to start by giving a massive thanks to killedtheboss for allowing me to use their footage for this video, cause there were 2 legacy bosses that were a special kind of hell trying to get to spawn. Dancer of the Boreal Valley just refused to spawn after 20 plus runs of Caligo and Heelster, but Centipede Demon I did encounter and recorded the fight, only for the recording to fail and just record a black screen with Centipede Demon noises in the background. Thanks, game. Anyways, there's not much for me to say on this fight. The floor may not be lava, but the fight still isn't anything worth going out of your way for. It's a mess, it's not fun, he hops around and slams a lot, and while there are some cool animations here, you don't really see a lot of it because you're going to spend most of the fight underneath him and basically attacking his legs or his crotch trying to damage him. Oh well. Number 28, Night Idol. Idol? Like Hatsune Miku or something? Anyways, this fight is honestly pretty annoying because you gotta deal with an aggressive little girl that has the power of God and a giant skeleton on her side, and unfortunately, she's very dodge spammy, and that means you can't just burst her down most of the time, unless you get lucky or have a specific build, I guess. Meanwhile, her minions are deadly enough that you can't just casually ignore them, and her discus can, well, not only can she spam you down with them, but they also stay around and as an active threat in the arena for an extended period of time, and them touching you can deal over half your health, and that's just off the first hit. They can still hit you multiple times after that. And it sucks, because you've only got 3 heals here. I don't like this boss, and honestly, if Daphne didn't have a somewhat interesting remembrance, I'd probably just skip this fight because I suck as Revenant. I'm sorry, I've tried, and it doesn't work. Number 27, Corrosion. The Corrosion is one of the 2 bosses that's part of Revenant's Remembrance, and it's a battle I can describe as absolute chaos, but I don't hate it. There isn't one enemy to focus on, instead it's multiple blighted corpses spawning in and proceeding to try to suicide bomb you. And yeah, I'm sure someone's mad that I said that word, and let me just say, these videos are marked as not for kids. You know what words I mean. I'm not going to talk like my audience is a bunch of children and over half of you are in your late 20s to early 30s, and if you unironically say sewer slide or self-forever sleep, you need to be shoved into a locker. Anyways, the fight is less of a fight and more a case of just moving around and trying not to get blown up by the kamikaze cadavers, while you occasionally have your phantoms do a little bit of work and maybe you attack an enemy or 2. It's chaotic, It can be kind of fun, but it's not a good boss fight. It honestly feels like it'd be funnier if it had like super high energy music like a mini game in Smash Bros. Number 26, One Strike Gladiator. The One Strike Gladiator is the first character remembrance boss many players will likely be able to encounter since it's so little work involved to actually unlock it. On top of that, Raider is one of my 2 solo mains. Raider is when I want to have fun, Duchess is when I want to get shit done. Anyways, the fight is essentially a Grave Warden duelist, which means it's not terrible, but it's nothing special. There's a combo or 2 here, but I wasn't super fond of these guys to begin with, and this guy is really just stunlock fodder, so there's not much of an actual fight to talk about here. Number 25, Fell Omen. These next 2 boss fights are ones that I debated whether or not I should even include them since they're both designed to kill you, but I decided, I'll throw them both on in. The Fell Omen is your first boss of the game, showing up at the end of the tutorial with the express purpose of kicking your ass. Afterwards, he has the ability to show up again throughout the game, either as a night boss or as an invading enemy, and while I don't think his design has any major flaws, I gotta be honest, I'm just not a fan of Morgott's fight in general. I don't know why, his moveset just never really clicked for me, and this fight doesn't do him any favors, especially when he's more than likely going to kill him in less than like 3 hits, unless you were to cheat in a bunch of runes so you could level up more like I did here for footage, and even then, it's still not exactly an easy win. I don't know. Number 24, Dreglord. The second of the bunch is the Dreglord, which I accidentally stumbled into right after Gladius at the start of this playthrough because I'd never touched Forsaken Hollows, so I was very surprised to see this boss here. Now, instead of being an invader, this boss is meant to be a teaser for an in-game battle, and I think he worked much better because of that. He's the thread that will stay in the back of your mind due to, well, the unique cutscene provided, and because technically Undertaker is here to help you, but to be honest, she'll die very quickly, so I don't think she's that useful. Still, the boss has a much more enjoyable moveset to deal with than many bosses so far, and even with the limited healing and set level, you can actually do alright against this boss, and it stays in the back of your mind and you prepare for your run back, which, whether the wait is just one obstruction or is the entire game, will be up to you. But everything about this boss feels nice and learnable, but since it's a one-shot boss with a proper definitive battle later on, I don't think I can put this fight higher than proper bosses in the game. Number 23, Duke's Dear Freya. Duke's Dear Freya is one of the Dark Souls 2 Legacy bosses, and for some odd reason, both Dark Souls 2 Legacy bosses are Night 1 battles, which admittedly, Freya I get because she's not hard. That kind of makes sense that she'd be a Night 1 battle. But it's interesting. The battle is ultimately much the same as her original fight against a giant 2-headed spider with a ton of underlings that can leap around and use magic. Though here it seems more like dark magic than regular magic, but that might just be a visual thing or a graphics thing, I'm not sure. One major change I noticed is that it seems like now she's guaranteed to have one head come off when her health gets low, but otherwise the fight is much the same as it was in Dark Souls 2, which is fine. Many mechanics and cool ideas from Dark Souls 2 were brought over to Elden Ring after all, however the fight falls short due to how slow paced the battle is. Now, unlike many Souls boss rankers and fans of these games, I actually enjoy some of the slower and more methodical fights from time to time, but in Freya's case, it's not so much methodical as it's more just stall heavy, with only her head taking damage, and she loves to turn away from you quite often in this fight. It's not bad, but it's not one I'm super fond of either, and to be honest, if we were gonna go for a Dark Souls 2 Dark Horse pick, I think I would have preferred something like the Skeleton Lords or oddly enough Demon of Song. Ah well. No point fretting over what could have been. Number 22, Blinding Elder Lion. You know, I'm kind of surprised the Lion Guardian enemies were never actually turned into boss fights in the base game of Elden Ring. Either way, this fight is alright, another battle from Raider's Remembrance, and it can be a decently tough foe, since your build is set, but this fight is also a great way to just show how strong and the Raider really can be when he's getting to stunlock enemies till the cows come home. It's a solid enough mini-boss, all in all, and if I was counting every single possible boss battle, he'd actually be in the upper level of it, but I don't feel like having 80% of this list just be random fodder with a health bar, or two bears high-fiving, so that's why we've got this awkward count at 30. Number 21, Equilibrious Beast. Having one of the Night Lords be able to spawn in the overworld is actually really cool, and he's a guy that loves a Faustian bargain, and I appreciate that you can engage with him on your own terms because he won't be the aggressor. But at the same time, he is a significantly watered down version of a much better boss fight and often goes down within less than a minute, so he's cool more as a feature than a boss fight. I do have a lot more to say about him, but I think I'm going to save that for when we cover the Night Lord itself. Number 20, Contaminant. The final boss of the Revenant Remembrance is a battle against the Contaminant, a purple royal revenant. In the base game Elden Ring, these fuckers are some of the worst opponents in the entire series, but oddly enough, I found this one far less spastic to deal with, and benefited by a few other mechanics like a decent arena, Revenant's ability to summon her 3 phantoms to help keep aggro off of her at points, and the always fun weakness to heals, which doesn't just hurt Contaminant, but straight up stuns his ass as well, so you can kind of keep knocking him around over and over again, and since you're guaranteed to have heal, it's kind of more of an intentional mechanic of the fight. Now, the battle can be a chaotic mess, but it's one I enjoy, and it actually carries some story weight as well, because, well, this is the ending of her remembrance, and the cutscene is actually, well, it's one of those cutscenes that's initially terrifying, and then it gets really depressing when you realize Daphne's first action was trying to save her owner, but she wasn't able to do so, which is why she's now set out on her path to revenge. Overall, it's a solid final boss for her story, and if you haven't played the character remembrances, I'd say it's at least worth looking into Revenant Raider and Executor, if nothing else. Number 19, Whitehorn. Speaking of Remembrance final bosses, we now have Whitehorn, whose name is actually really ironic for a reason I'm not going to say just to screw with the people who are only listening to the audio of this video. Anyways, this is a 2-phase battle, with phase 1 being a fairly simple but still somewhat deadly NPC opponent dual-wielding axes, which means it's all about spacing out and using your skills as needed, but it can be fun to smack enemies around with Raider's big-ass weapons from time to time. But after taking enough damage, his body mutates into a contaminated tree spirit, a fight that would probably be really annoying if you didn't like the ulcerated tree spirits, but I'm one of those weirdos that kind of likes fighting these guys. Also, the arena is extremely large, the music is quite beautiful, and you have battle arts to easily stun the boss and get plenty of punish opportunities on him, so it can be a pretty fun and cathartic battle. Combine that with a great ending to his story, and you have a nice battle that, dare I say, is the start of the good tier. Number 18, Dancer of the Boreal Valley. So I have fought this boss before when I was doing the multiplayer, and then for some reason the second I decided to start recording these bosses, she became the most camera shy boss in the game, and I haven't seen her since that multiplayer romp almost a year ago. And as for the fight, well, Dancer of the Boreal Valley is Dancer of the Boreal Valley. She was a fun boss in Dark Souls 3, and she's a fun boss here, just now with more uncanny animations thrown in for the flavor, and sadly, I can't speak any more on this fight. Number 17, Maris. A few people are going to say this fight is too low, and many others are likely going to say this battle is way too high. This fight is probably the most job class dependent in the game, but as a recluse, the battle is actually quite fun. If you're not struggling to hit the boss, it's honestly not bad. The design is very alien, almost like a jellyfish, but also kind of like Elden Beast, and with a whole lot of the Bloodborne flavor of what the fuck am I looking at? Just not nearly as grotesque as a lot of Bloodborne bosses. And the underwater design of the arena really gives this fight some good atmosphere. Overall, while I wouldn't say this battle is anything amazing, it's definitely one of the slower battles in the game. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it, because sure, it may be a more slow and methodical battle in nature, but it's kind of around the point I learned that Recluse can actually be quite fun to play if you're one of those people that likes micromanaging smaller systems, and you know what? Yeah, I can enjoy that from time to time. I'm never going to be a Recluse main, but yeah, she can be fun. It's honestly the easiest Night Lord by far, but that's not a bad thing, and the music is quite nice, if a bit ominous. I guess I should also mention I'm only looking at regular Night Lords here and not the Everdarks because I don't feel like it, and also because I'm not good enough to solo those bosses. So that's why we're only looking at the major fights. Number 16, Demon in Pain, Demon from Below. I forgot to hit record till I already killed one of them. Whoops, my bad. Anyways, I consider the Dark Souls 3 version of this fight to be the pinnacle of gank bosses. However, while I don't hate this interpretation, it is still a downgrade for two reasons. One being that instead of a fight with no runback, it's got a massive runback, and beating it doesn't have a proper second phase, as the surviving demon flies off to be battled on a future night. It's a cool idea for a boss, and I will give it that. I like the idea behind it, and it does still have the pick your phase 2 gimmick, except now you're picking who you're going to fight for Night 2, but it doesn't quite hit the same in Nightreign as it did in Dark Souls 3, mainly because you're not in the middle of one big grand fight. You know that there's another 20 minutes in between this battle, and if you die, then the run back is going to be absurd, assuming the demons even spawn in the first place. Number 15, Fulgor. Fulgor should be an amazing boss, and you know what, he probably is one, but I have the worst luck when it comes to boss run RNG against this guy because I always get passives like heal or restore blah 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 upon guard, and then the only shields I ever end up getting are the shitty small shields with a guard boost of 3.5. Anyways, the fight itself is fun, but not one I feel the desire to go back to constantly. His first phase feels like a proper final evolution of the mounted bosses fought throughout Elden Ring, and unlike Commander Gaius, he doesn't have any bullshit hitboxes that make me start uttering derogatory terms for sexual deviance. Phase 2 is more interesting as he pulls out his abyssal arm, wielding the powers that he seemed to want nothing to do with, but self-preservation is forcing him to unleash them. Fulgor is one of the bosses that makes me wish this wasn't a roguelike because honestly, the Night Lords can all be a ton of fun, other than Adele, but because of how RNG heavy your build will be, half the time, you're either going to have some really awesome duels with the Proud Warrior, or an overly effect heavy shitfest that looks like we have FromSoft at home, where half the challenge is seeing what the hell is going on. But hey, the music is really good, though it sounds like something from God of War. What do you think the odds are that Shovel Knight will show up as a secret boss at the end of the God of War remake trilogy since he was in Shovel Knight? Number 14, Executor's Cry. Sometimes simplicity is best. The final boss of the Executor's Remembrance is a no-nonsense sword duel to the death in the prettiest arena in the entire game. This boss is a Sekiro boss fight. I love Sekiro to the point I have a 2.5 hour video on it, as well as a boss ranking that you can totally go watch, but I know you won't. That being said, this fight is brief because if you get stance broken, you die. Just plain and simple. But otherwise, it's a no-nonsense duel to the death of two samurai just trying to deal the fatal blow against one another. You can use your Cursed Blade special art for guaranteed damage if you've deflected enough, but interestingly, this fight never lasts long enough for you to get your ultimate, meaning you simply have to just square up in a 1v1, and I'm okay with that. This fight isn't as flashy or complex as many others in the game, but honestly, I think it's a fantastic final boss for the Executor's Remembrance, and I really wish the other characters all had unique final bosses for their remembrances, because this one, Revenant, and Raider all stand out far more than the others do to me because they get their own final boss fights. Number 13, Gladius. The first Night Lord players will come across is honestly a pretty good one. He has the appearance of a mighty beast, but at the same time nothing feels super overwhelming as every attack looks flashy but feels fairly natural to dodge, and even with some attacks being more dangerous, it's not quite as unforgiving due to Nightreign having revives either through party member assistance in multiplayer or just straight up having revival passives and revival items in solo. And the boss has a second phase where the three wolves can split apart from one another to make, well, three actual wolves, and they can form back together as necessary, and despite how chaotic it may initially seem, I gotta be honest, I think it's fun, and I'm very happy to say that between Armored Core 6 and Nightreign, it seems like From Software finally remembered how to make a good gank boss. The battle isn't easy by any means, but it's not impossible, and the knowledge that ultimate arts, or at least when they're attacks, are guaranteed stuns on the boss, while also making you temporarily invincible can help you out a ton. Make sure to use those, by the way. Anyways, use your character abilities and increase mobility to make your life easier, and you'll have a fun time. The fight is pretty fun, and the fact that he's essentially the final boss's pet dog is kinda awesome. I like Gladius overall. Number 12, Grafted Monarch. So, it's not specified what grafted individual this is, but I choose to believe that this fight is against Godfrey the Grafted because it would be absolutely hilarious to me, and I do have a slight reasoning behind it other than just memes. Now, phase 1 of the fight is the exact same as Godric the Grafted, which is understandable, they're grafted monarchs. It's a fun fight, even if it can be annoying to get knocked out of the Nightreign arena thing, because then you get knocked into the damage zone, which isn't lethal, usually, but, you know, can be a bit annoying. But he actually has a unique phase 2 because instead of the dragon grafting and fire damage, he's sticking to his wind attacks of old, but with some new moves in his arsenal, utilizing incantations that remind me of the aspects of the Crucible though instead of being draconic, they honestly look more like tree roots to me. Still, a surprisingly fun fight, and a new Phase 2 gives this boss far more staying power in my eyes. So, good job, legally distinct Godric. I'm choosing to believe this is Godofroy because, again, it's funny. Number 11. Demon Prince. The Dark Souls 3 iteration of Demon Prince is one of my favorite bosses of all time, and while I don't think this version is bad, it has some more glaring issues that are kind of a blanket statement for any sort of night boss, because the arena is more small than some of these legacy boss arenas were originally, but more importantly, the rain constantly damages you if you're going to step outside into it. Meanwhile, the boss can fly out of the arena and charge up his big scary attacks while he's in the rain, and you just are either sort of stuck there waiting for the big attack to finish, or you have to go out there, however far he may be, into the rain to take damage, unless you've got like a great bow or maybe some magic builds. Granted, this is mostly just an issue with the Red Demon Prince because Orange Demon Prince lacks the long-range Spirit Bomb attacks and instead relies upon his laser beams, which are easy to abuse against him. I don't know. It's an excellent fight. However, given that it's only the second phase of the original battle, there's not exactly a phase escalation, so to speak. It's just kind of all going chaotic. Yeah, I mean, it's fun though. Though, I gotta be honest, due to the worse arena and the battle being split in half, I gotta dock some points from the fight. I still love this fight, but I'd much rather boot up Dark Souls 3 to fight him instead of Elden Ring Nightreign. Number 10, Gaping Dragon. Longtime viewers probably aren't surprised to see this fight so high, but for newer viewers, hi, welcome to my channel. Gaping Dragon is my favorite boss fight in Dark Souls 1. Now, to be 100% objective and fair, he does lose some of the luster when he's in a far more advanced video game than Dark Souls 1. But you know what? I think the fight is still a ton of fun, albeit he's definitely showing his age here on this newer engine. But he's not a bad fight by any means. All of his moves have clear tells, his music is still excellent, he's got some new attacks to keep you on your toes, and you can still cut his tail off for a weapon, which I wish FromSoft would bring back. Come on, Duskbloods, don't let me down now. We already know they're not going to do that shit anymore. Anyways, I still love this boss fight, and even with the more complex movesets of Nightreign, he can still be a fun playground. I just wish he wasn't locked to being a random and somewhat remote Night 1 spawn. Number 9, Nameless King. Of course, we then have the Nameless King, who I just think should have straight up been a Night Lord. Call him Legacy of the Night or some shit, I don't care. But honestly, he's got the complexity to match the other Night Lords, and if you get this guy as your Night 2 boss and you aren't practiced up against him, you can kiss your run goodbye, because he's the hardest boss in the base game by quite a bit, in my personal opinion at least. The issue is the first phase has you also battling the King of the Storms, who already isn't an amazing fight, but is also left with the unfortunate arena surrounded by the Death Rain. Well, okay, to be fair, the arena's usually not going to be too bad, but I hate Noclateo, and anytime that shows up, you know you're going to be getting this weird slanted arena that can screw up a lot of attacks. Maybe I'll give a Noclateo rant some other day. Now, on the other hand, the on-foot phase, I didn't notice any new moves or tricks up his sleeve, but that's not exactly a bad thing. Nameless was in many ways a template for many of the modern From Software bosses, with more deliberate delays in their attacks requiring you to avoid roll spamming, and his moveset still holds up very well as him having like scripted staggers where you can repost him, and that sort of stamina system. I just wish we didn't have to deal with the King of the Storm phase, because it can be especially irritating if the arena ends up being on a hill, but oh well. Overall, it's an excellent fight, it's one that I'm happy when he does show up, and while he's definitely going to be a challenge and I have a good chance of losing a revive, the fact is, it's still fun, and there's always a guaranteed revive at the end of, well, at the beginning of day 3. Number 8, Hjolster. The final boss fight of Elden Ring Nightreign is a good battle, but I don't even remotely agree with the sentiment of it being peak From Software or the greatest battle they've ever made. It's fun, but it really does just feel like fan service the boss fight, and while I may be the world's biggest Soul of Cinder meat writer, I don't think this fight hits the same. It's the Riz versus harassment argument, essentially. Anyways, the fight itself is another one of those 2 health bar bosses, as many people talk about how easy and how much of a joke Phase 1 is, and while they're not wrong, I absolutely suck at Phase 1. It's honestly embarrassing how bad I am at Phase 1, where it actually kicks my ass way more than Phase 2 does, just because I keep getting cocky and I keep getting greedy. But once you stop getting mollywopped like the dipshit you are, the true battle begins, with him now utilizing the Moonlight Greatsword, as this fight is actually paying homage to a game known as Kingsfield, the ancient city. He's got more complex combos and follow-ups, and honestly, this phase is a lot of fun, but I gotta admit, I'm not a big fan of his quick dash forward, because if you're moving towards him or try to press the attack, you're pretty much just gonna eat shit when he does that attack. Then when his health drops lower, he'll cut open the sky to take the powers of one of the other Night Lords, as we can see their domain being accessed during the boss fight, and this can wildly change his offensive elements, though to my knowledge, his moves more or less remain the same, just with different damage types. In a traditional Souls game, this would be awesome, but here it can be frustrating because that means if you get unlucky RNG, you're either fighting an uphill battle or you're stalling him out until he's out of gas. And I say that because when he does burn himself out, he'll no longer channel the power of the Night Lord, and he goes back to his Moonlight Greatsword, now just with greater emphasis on explosive attacks, but also with a feeling like he's starting to get worn down and the music becoming more subdued, while starting to sound like the main theme is a nice touch. I actually love this part of the fight, it's my favorite part, and while he can call upon another Night Lord's power, including the DLC ones in the final stretch, it feels like a long-awaited victory lap, and it's a lot of fun. Now, I couldn't tell you a damn thing about the ending because quite honestly, I don't really care, but it's a fun final boss even though it is one I consider to be overrated. Number 7, Caligo. Now for the obligatory dragon of the game, well, I guess Gaping Jaw as well, but I don't really want to count him. Caligo is a much more slender dragon than many others in the series, but there's decent opportunities to hit all parts of the ice dragon's body, and the giant ice dragon is very cool. Pun not intended, but not apologized for. The fight is some absolute cinema, honestly having a grander spectacle than even Hjolster in my personal opinion, and I think it's excellent. Dragon bosses can be hard to nail down, and I can't go and say that she's better than Midir or Bale at this point, but she has a ton of fun, and she's one of the bosses that benefits the most from Nightraign's improved mobility. On top of that, the music in this fight is absolutely beautiful. This is one of the Night Lords that had a new composer for the boss music, and while I love my Yuka Kitamura tracks and many other Elden Ring songs, this one isn't here to give you some heart-pounding fight to the death or somber battle. Well, maybe a little bit. Instead, the music just wants you to take in the beauty of everything with the ice rain, the ceiling that relies on you using your ears to help avoid damage or just really good dodge timing, and many more cool things. Plus, with the mountaintops seeming to be the most common Earth-shipped event, at least out of the ones I always get, you can easily come in prepared for this fight regardless of whatever gear and RNG you may be given. The salty part of me wants to put this fight in great tier because I fought her 10 times to get the damn dancer to spawn, and she never did, but realistically, I can't do that. I think she's one of From Software's best dragon fights, and while not as difficult as the likes of Midir or Bale or honestly even Calamite, she is a more than fun foe to fight, and she's one I enjoy a lot. Plus, with her being easily able to rematch without having to play through the entire game, well, it's a lot of fun, and it's one of the few reasons I haven't uninstalled Nightreign already. Number 6, Gnoster, Wisdom of Gnight. And now for Nightraign's second gank fight. This battle was honestly a big sigh of sweet relief for me that From Software had truly learned how to make a good gank boss again. Gnoster is a sort of symbiotic relationship between a scorpion and the moth, acting as a bulky physical fighter and a frail magic attacker. The fight is very different from many gank bosses because instead of 2 humanoid foes or a reliance on pillars, you have something more resembling the Demon Twins from Dark Souls 3 with a massive boss arena, and 2 foes that will swap between being the primary aggressor, which does a good job keeping the player on the move throughout the fight. Compared to some of the previous entries we've talked about, this is a much simpler boss fight, as it's meant to be one of your first Night Lords, but that doesn't make it bad, and I love how in Phase 2 the duo unite to effectively become a magic mobile artillery or something like that. Or a Megazord, I guess. And, I don't know. It's fun, just don't take the fight next to the invisible wall. That kind of breaks the boss's AI, and at least starts turning, but I'm not really bitter about that one, it's just kind of funny. The fight is fun. It's a more unique boss concept than Angry Dude or Dragon, so it's getting points for uniqueness, and the big sell for me is the music. I think this is the best song in the entire game, and it's not even close. I'm not quite sure what the opinion will be on this placement, as I don't know anyone that actually hates Noster, but having him as my second favorite of the base game Night Lords is probably going to turn a few heads. Oh well, I don't really care. I love this fight, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Number 5, Smelter Demon. In my personal opinion, Smelter Demon is the best legacy boss in Elden Ring Nightreign. At least before the DLC anyways. He's already one of the best Dark Souls 2 boss fights, but his battle just feels like it translates the best out of all the legacy bosses. I'm not going to say Smelter Demon in Dark Souls 2 is a better boss than Nameless King in Dark Souls 3, but with the modifications made to each fight, I'm much happier when Smelter Demon shows up. For one, his alternating attack timings are already a feature seen a fair bit in Elden Ring, so he fits in fairly well. But otherwise, as the fight moves on, well, it's all just sort of feels nice to dodge and engage with, and while his arena can be random, I think he fits in the dried up lake area extremely well, and that's the area I get most of the time when I face him, as well as his flames doing a great job contrasting against the night sky. But what really sells it for me is his other mechanic, which makes him feel like a proper raid boss, and that would be his, well, flaming mechanic. As we all know, at 70% HP, Smelter will ignite his stomach to both set his sword alight, as well as start doing chip damage if you get too close. But if you play too passive, he'll actually start igniting even greater and greater levels, taking this really awesome looking blue and red looking flame, which looks amazing. And it is very deadly on his attacks, but the chip damage also gets a little bit higher. But as he gets low on HP, he actually has one last deadly trick up his sleeve as he goes and enters his blue flame mode, which will cause you to just get burnt to the ground faster than a regular human in an episode of Jujutsu Kaisen. You have to play aggressive here. But it's not a case of you have to kill him before he kills you, there's a little bit more to it. All you need to do is stagger him, which will reset him back to his base form, minus the flaming sword. That's still going to be very dangerous. It becomes a thrilling juggling act, and it's backed up by one of my favorite boss themes in Dark Souls 2. Some people consider Dark Souls 2 an ugly duckling of a family. I just consider it to be a slightly weird one, but I actually like it a bit more than Dark Souls 1, and I'm happy one of my favorite Dark Souls 2 bosses got to pull some representation for this game. Number 4, Weapon Bequeathed Harmonia. Okay, I'm not going to pretend like I adore Elden Ring Nightreign, but it is pretty telling that outside of that one-shot fight with Dreglord, we're only just now seeing the 2.5 new bosses that were added into the Forsaken Hollows DLC. That 0.5 will make sense soon enough. Harmonia seems like she'd be overwhelming. A 7v1? Are you fucking insane? What is this Zangrang bullshit? Well, no. First off, this boss has a massive weakness to sleep, so crowd control is never an issue here, and the second is they stagger very easily, so it's not hard to knock them around. And third, there may be 7 of them, but their aggro range is so tiny that you're never dealing with more than 2 at a time. It's going to make you panic at first, but keep a cool head and it's pretty easy. This part is fun. It's simple, but there's some satisfaction to it, and all their moves are pretty straightforward and make sense. Spears and maces, they're going to do some slashing, they've got a glaive thrown in there, and you might take a hit or two because you're being an idiot. They don't really seem to attack you from off screen though, which is something nice. Usually if they are, they're either directly on your screen, or they're forming spikes beneath you, which has that little, mist effect, which is nice. Of course, there's a phase 2, where Harmonia decides she needs to lock in as her drones become more aggressive, and to be honest, this phase is one that will overwhelm you at first. But surprisingly, after the initial onslaught, the drones will respect the 1v1, unless it's time to perform a united attack, which in terms of moveset, well, it's not that hard to deal with. Now, in terms of individual movesets, I think Spear Harmonia has my favorite moveset of any boss in this game. Everything feels perfectly natural and it's a blast to deal with. However, I got to address my big nitpick. I absolutely suck at the mace form of Harmonia, to the point I just try to save my ultimate so I can stun lock her out of it if I see she's getting repped up. This is also where I came to the conclusion that I will never be a Wilder main because I am not good enough to just play as him. But still, I'm not letting myself get in the way. For now, I'd still give the Dark Souls 3 Demon Prince fight the edge, but this is one of the greatest gank bosses ever created in a video game. Really, these top 4 fights are just me splitting hairs and could be shuffled around. They're all excellent. Number 3, Libra. Unlike the other Night Lords, Libra can be encountered in the overworld prior, as we saw with Equilibrious Beast, But ultimately, his main fight is here as the 5th Night Lord, and for many players, he'll be fought after you've slain the final boss of the game. Well, maybe not many players, but some players will probably do that. Though, it's not like you can't just come back and rematch him later, which is nice. It's interesting how a boss using the Frenzied Flame is less of a being of pure madness and instead one of balance, but I think it works. The Frenzied Flame is presented as evil, not only destroying the body but the soul as well, meaning eternal damnation. This boss design is looking like some Baphomet motherfucker, and that's no coincidence, and that's also why he's, well, the Equilibrious Beast. He's a demon that loves to make deals, and that's why before the fight starts he'll give you something you want, in exchange for a great cost. After all, you took the deal, so it's only fair he takes what it's owed, even if you didn't read the fine print. The fight itself is a balance between two modes. A collected master of the Frenzied Flame, utilizing its powers to drive its foes to madness and casting multiple deadly spells, which thankfully also leaves stones to reduce madness buildup, so it's more or less a case of finding safe zones, and it's not like the fight's on an artificial time limit. But he's not some Lord of the Frenzied Flame. He's not immune to his own madness, which sends him into a blind rage, which does far more damage whenever he attacks you. But it's also far easier to avoid its attacks, all while being backed up by some crazy music with mandolins thrown in? Interesting choice. It sounds like pure chaos, kind of because it is, albeit different from the sort of chaos that was Midra. That was more constantly falling up, while this theme is going just absolutely batshit insane. But of course, the Frenzied Flame had to get one over on me because for some reason, this boss theme consistently crashes my editing software when trying to load its MP3 file in, so that's why you're not hearing it, and that's why you're probably hearing Telethia's theme from Xenoblade X instead. That being said, it's about time we talk about the difficulty. This fight is often considered the hardest battle in the base game, and yeah, it is, in co-op. The boss buffs and the Frenzied Flame being bad for everyone means you need to have a super coordinated team to take on this Eldritch Baphomet. Meanwhile, in solo, he's actually much easier to fight. Not easy by any means, but more like a 7.5 out of 10 on the difficulty scale instead of a 10, due in large part to solo players being guaranteed at least 2 revives for this battle if they so choose. The fight is fantastic, and I'm glad we got a second rep for the Frenzied Flame with Midra representing the sheer power, while Libra represents the twisted forces within it. And it's far and away the best boss in base game Nightreign. But there was for the Forsaken Hollows DLC, and there was 2 other bosses to cover. Number 2, Knight Artorias. Here's the half I was referring to in those 2.5 new bosses. Artorias is excellent. He's the foundation upon which all of From Software's greatest humanoid bosses were built, and he still holds up well to this day, even with Dark Souls 1 being a 15-year-old game. Jesus Christ. And his battle is a fun trip down the nostalgia lane, with slightly increased aggression from his original fight to keep up with the increased pace of Nightreign, and also the music here is really good, being his theme from Dark Souls 1, though to me it seems like the audio quality is a bit better than the original. I don't know, maybe I'm just gaslighting myself, who knows. Overall, Phase 1 of the fight is a nice callback to his old battle. And yes, I said Phase 1, because while he may have originally only had a single phase in Dark Souls 1, they added a little bit more to it. And I say that because at 60% health he enters a brand new second phase, bringing forth the Abyss while having a cool new moveset. Now this moveset is really just a modified version of his old one, which is a good idea. It can definitely be tricky to deal with and maybe a bit panic-inducing, but keep a cool head and you'll realize just how readable his attacks truly are. Not to say it's easy by any means, the boss can be very punishing and I was starting to panic at some points, and there's always a chance of making stupid mistakes near the end of the battle, but remember this, there is no long range against Artorias. You were always in range against him. I cut this fight way too close because my ass was getting put in the dirt many times. I was out of healing and revives, but damn it if he wasn't a fun revisit. And unlike the base game legacy bosses, he has a high spawn rate so you can actually see him fairly often and get some practice against him, if you wish, which is cool. It's also great to see a classic boss get a nice upgrade, and I'm happy to see Artorias is here to show these kids who's boss. Number 1, Traitorous Stragus, the Dreglord. At the end of the Forsaken Hollows DLC, we finally get our run back with the Dreglord in a 4-phase boss fight that has a sense of finality that Hilster couldn't even hope to match. Story-wise, I couldn't tell you what's going on other than him being a rot god, but his first phase is the Dreglord fight you face at the beginning of the DLC or early on in the game, so at the very least there is a feeling of getting the salty run back. Phase 2 is where things get interesting as the dregs themselves begin to rise and the scarlet rain covers the sky, meaning that you can get scarlet rot very quickly. It seems like this fight would be overwhelming, but everything moves at a deliberate enough pace that nothing here feels super overwhelming or overstimulating to deal with. And I say that because all of this footage you're seeing here was my first ever attempt against Stragas, and I managed to come away with a win. The dregs seems to be like they would be annoying, but honestly, with how many buff on kill passives there are in Nightreign, they can actually be quite the blessing. And also, they're so passive that I think they only attacked me once all fight. They're more or less just there to get killed as collateral damage, and I guess, give some set dressing and maybe keep you on the move a bit. Overall, Phase 2 is a lot of fun, and it's a good upgrade. I couldn't tell you what the deal is with the Giant Penis Man, though. When he goes down, he's going to have a second health bar, because of course he does, and Phase 3 of the fight begins as he becomes the pure Impulse. The mobs are gone, and all that's left is a 1v1. The music in this phase is excellent, and that string section is going absolutely ham with this boss theme. And it also has a greater emphasis on things like strings than choir, which allows the music to stand out from among a lot of the stiff competition. Everything here in this fight is great. The music's beautiful, it sounds like a grand finale, and that's because it is. This is the boss at the end of everything, and he's your final challenge. And while some may have preferred a 1v1 humanoid battle, we already got that against Hilster, and personally, I prefer this fight as it feels something like an homage to Manus with a more beastly opponent, but still fighting someone like a human. His attacks are scary, but they're surprisingly readable, and it's a lot of fun. Then at half health we enter phase 4, where the music goes completely crazy, and so does Stragas as he begins jumping off pillars of rot to attack you, which looks scary, but great shields are your friend, and despite how crazy this fight looks, it's surprisingly not too hard to keep track of everything. Now, don't get me wrong, the boss is still demanding as all hell, but I played this DLC for the very first time during this playthrough, and this was my first ever battle against Stragas, and if I was able to solo it and still have an Estus flask left over, that clearly means the battle isn't as overwhelming as it may initially seem. But it's still a fantastic finale that sits comfortably at home with the other excellent DLC final bosses in the FromSoft library. He's a blast to play through, and he was an enjoyable battle to end the game off on, though I did go back and fight him a couple more times just to make sure that my feelings were genuine, and yeah, he's still a blast. If only this boss was in a better game. And that's going to do it for this video. Nightreign was certainly a game, I'll say that much. I'm honestly not sure why I decided to play this game again, but for one reason or another I felt the desire to revisit it and also cover the DLC, partially because I haven't seen anyone make any sort of boss ranking on this game outside of the base game Night Lords, and one video on the Everdarks. It was an okay revisit, but I stand by this game not being a good roguelike, but a decent enough time, and I don't know. I think I'm just kind of burnt out on roguelikes in general at this point. Between this, and Nevergrave, I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to deal with another 30-hour roguelike. Once again, big thanks to killedtheboss for letting me use his footage so I didn't have to lose my sanity doing runs over and over again in hopes of seeing that one legacy boss that refused to show up. But either way, that's all I've got for this video. If you'd like to see more content of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing. I've covered Dark Souls 1 through 3 in boss rankings, I've covered Sekiro in a boss ranking, I've also made full-ass videos on those games. If you want to give those a watch, feel free to. I'm going to go play a good video game now. See you later.